Welcome to Drive-In, a show where it's okay to buy a shirt for a car you'll never own.
And of course, we'd like to start the show off with a segment called This Week in Car Geek. Now, this week we have, which I like this car. I'll tell you that.
Okay,
Okay, ready?
I'm
We have
ready.
the new Chevy SS, which was just unveiled, I think, at Daytona back in February. I'm not sure when it hits the market, but I'm telling you, I like this car. I like this car a lot, but one thing about this car is that you're going to see a lot of 40, 50-year-old guys driving around this car, because what it is it's kind of like the poor man's Corvette. Now,
See, I always thought as 80s Corvettes is the poor man's Corvette.
could be 415 brake horsepower as opposed to a Corvette. The new C7 Corvette's 450. Now, horsepower-wise, speed-wise,
Well, it's also going to weigh far more than the Corvette.
it's going to weigh a boatload.
But that's also because it's also got 4 doors and a trunk. I like it. I mean, I don't really like the rims, but I think it's going to be like, I like a really subtle car. I mean, I like the flashy cars as well, but there's something to be said about a car that no one expects to go fast. Like, I bet you anybody who doesn't really know cars that well, when they first see this thing on the road, they're going to assume it's going to be like front-wheel drive. Like, oh, it's the Malibu replacement.
But I heard that this was, for the first time in almost 20 years, that Chevy made a rear-wheel drive.
It's been a lot. Well, other than like the Impalas, like what they made for the cops, like yeah, it's been a while since they've made a rear-wheel drive sedan that isn't a Cadillac. I mean, technically Chevy made the Pontiac G8 XP thing, but Pontiac's gone now. And then you have the CTS, but the CTS is like $55,000. Well, the CTS-V. The CTS-V starts at like $55,000, and that's what gets you the big V8 motor. But
me, I like it. It's got the track wheel on there too.
yeah, that flat bottom.
Right.
Just like how I like my ladies. Big, round, and with a flat bottom. Like, it's going to have a lot of plastic inside. But you know what? I expect that because I'm not paying for a really fancy interior. I'm paying for the fact that Chevy shoehorned an LS7 motor into a sedan.
Which brings us to the next car, the new Mercedes CLA 45 AMG.
All-wheel drive, 2-liter turbo, 355 horsepower.
At first glance, it's magnificent.
It's not bad. I mean, I like it. But it's one of those things where it's like, it's hard to find an ugly Mercedes that was made in the last 5 years that someone hasn't intentionally uglied up. How much is it going to be?
And for just under 50 grand.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're looking for pure horsepower, all-wheel drive kind of stuff, like $50,000 is a steep price to pay for 355 ponies. But that's not what you're paying for. You're paying for the interior.
You're paying for the Mercedes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's gonna. I don't know if I really like the vents. I don't understand like the jet fighter vents, and like carbon fiber doesn't really like get my rocks off. Like I don't get into a car and see carbon fiber and think, oh yeah, you were gonna get a lot of high school chicks in that thing. I mean, I think it just kind of follows along the same line of cars where it's like rich guys can buy their kids cars that they can go goof around in. That's who's going to buy this car.
There you go. Fair enough. Okay, and lastly, we have the new 2014 Audi A3. And again, Audi's put out another beautiful car to me.
This is supposed to be new for 2014, 2015, because the A3s up until this point have been a hatchback. And they've basically been a Volkswagen Golf that Audi has come in and kind of done their own stuff with. I dig it. I dig that sedan. It's going to be tiny, don't get me wrong. I'm pretty sure it's still going to be based off the Golf. But the fact that they were able to to make it a sedan is awesome. I assume it's going to come with either the same 2-liter turbo. That's the downside, is the only way you can really kind of get into this thing, like finding the all-wheel drive ones are going to be hard because they're going to go like crazy. They're going to go out the door almost immediately. So then you're only left with like the TDI and the front-wheel drive versions, and those aren't the ones you're going to want. You're going to want the all-wheel drive.
Yeah, I heard one complaint about this car is that it's not a wagon or a hatchback. So over in Europe, it'll have it, but over here, we're getting the sedan.
Oh, so they're nixing the hatchback completely?
Over here. There's some over there.
That's actually a good thing, and here's why. Because that means that either people who currently own the hatchback the price is going to go up, so good news for them. And 2, if you really want one, you can always buy an older hatchback and be just fine and still get it. I don't know, I like the sedan, but I feel like, is there someone who drives the Audi A4 and is like, God, this thing's just too big. It's huge. And, you know, and they're like, oh, this thing will be perfect.
Right.
I'm sure they're out there. I don't know who they would be, but.
And that'll end this segment of This Week in Car Geek.
Now, I was able to get inside the Fiat 500, which is my favorite front-wheel drive 2-door coupe. I'm not a big fan of front-wheel drive, but there is something about this car that really won me over. The Fiat 500 is easily the best 2-door front-wheel drive car, bar none. It is the cheapest, it comes standard with the most options, and it looks the best. That was pretty short. I think what I really like most about it is the fact that this car gives you the sensation of speed with none of the consequences. But this car has a lot of competition. There is the Scion IQ, which is really only bought by people who have no personality or no ability to create for themselves. There is the Mazda 2, which is a car that is so bulbous and ugly, I would assume would be purchased by someone who probably needs a wheelchair to get around their own house. There is the Hyundai Veloster, which is ugly. There is the Toyota Yaris, which is also ugly. There is the Volkswagen GTI, which is good looking, handles well, but is really expensive. And then there's also the Ford Focus, or the Fiesta, which is bought by parents for their children. Ah, but you may be thinking to yourself, why don't I buy a Mini? I'll tell you why you don't buy a Mini. 1, price. 2, every time I see somebody behind the wheel of one of those, it's an old guy who could not afford a Corvette. And oddly enough, almost all of those cars, except for the IQ, have more horsepower than this. But really, in a front-wheel drive car, you don't want more horsepower. If you want a lot of horsepower and you want to go quickly, don't buy a front-wheel drive car. But if you'd like to get around town in style, economically, front-wheel drive is definitely the way to go. And the Fiat 500 is the one to do it in. I said do it. This car has it all. A leather-wrapped steering wheel, Bluetooth, air conditioning, power windows, power door locks, remote keyless entry, all come standard. And yes, there is the Abarth version, which makes 160 horsepower. And then there's also the Scorpione edition coming out with 180 horsepower. But like I said, it's front-wheel drive. You do not need a car that has that much horsepower. And yes, this car has some feminine qualities about it, but I'm fine with that. It is the automotive equivalent of walking around with a puppy. All the girls will say, oh, what an adorable car. And you can say, it's my car. Want to go for a ride? Except you're going to want to say it a lot less creepier than I did. And there are different trim levels. This is the Pop. But honestly, all the other trim levels outside of the Abarth and Scorpione, they all come with the same motor, same basic layout. All you're getting is leather seats and different rims. Unless, of course, you get the convertible. What I think really sells me on the Fiat is the fact that It's a complete thought. There's nothing about this car that I think, I wish it had this, or I can't believe they added that. It's a Goldilocks car. Not too hard, not too soft, not too hot, not too cold, not too quiet, not too loud, not too much power, not enough power. I'm telling you, it's perfect. I'm gonna be honest, I don't think there's one single flaw about this car. Now, is it the best car ever made? No, but it is the best two-door front-wheel drive hatchback. Well, I hope you enjoyed my review of the Fiat. Stick around for our next episode, where both Kenny and I review the Porsche Panamera. And I think you'll be genuinely surprised on the opinion I form on that automobile. Thanks for watching. Please like us, and as always, subscribe.